Coach, I was hoping we'd get to meet the pride of Boston today. Can you confirm Coach O'Brien's candidacy at BC and where that's at?
Yeah, no real updates there. He's working today, and we'll kind of see how it goes.
He's in the building?
He's here today, yeah.
Right behind him, Adam King, WBNS.
What was it about Bill O'Brien that made him the right hire here?
Yeah, I think at the end of the season, you look hard at, what kind of changes need to be made. And as we know at Ohio State, we're chasing that, 1 or 2%, right? We're chasing that, last couple drives of a game or whatever that is. And, I felt like in that particular situation, for me to really be able to, hand over, a lot of the duties that I was doing, I really was looking for somebody who had great background in the NFL, the SEC. He was a former head coach. He had been a head coach in the league, and the experience of developing quarterbacks was there. So and then the fit culturally was the right fit.
So are you hoping to hand over play calling duties to this coming season?
Yeah, that'd be the idea.
Let's go far left. Dave Biddle, 24/7 Sports.
Brian, have you joked with Jeff Hafley that he's on the verge of negatively affecting you twice now?
Yeah, god dang. Yeah, it was not good. But I spoke to Jeff, and happy for him that he's got a new challenge ahead of him. And but yeah, that was a curveball we were not expecting. We were expecting a fastball and got a curveball.
Transfer portal. Could it have gone any better for you guys? The 5 guys you got, 6 including Julian, and then could you add maybe one more?
Yeah, I think last year we were at 7. I think right now we're at 6, and I think I've said this before. In that type of situation, what we're trying to fill needs. We always want to recruit high school players and then develop them, and I think we're doing that as good as anybody in the country. But when we have opportunities to fill needs, Chip left, so we were able to bring in Quinshawn. There was, Kyle went in the portal, so we were able to bring in Will. We're trying to fill needs. But, I think, guys can, see what's going on here. I think, even having someone like Davison Igbinosun, who was at Ole Miss, just to give a little feedback on what it's like to be at Ohio State. For Caleb, he knew what this was. He had relationships with Jordan Hancock and some of the guys on our team. So a big part of it is it goes back to the guys that came back. And I think that was the number one thing coming off the season is the guys coming back and seeing that they wanted to be with their teammates and reach their goals. And to me, that's where all this started. So when you think about where JT and Denzel, Jack, Tyleek, Lathan, Travion, Emeka, Donovan. I mean, these are all really high-end players who decided they wanted to come back. And it wasn't for anything other than their teammates, their coaches, the culture, and that kind of set the tone for all of it. And then we started to fill in a couple of the pieces. And like you said, there wasn't a lot. It wasn't big numbers. But hopefully the guys that we brought in can make an impact.
Fourth row middle, Tony German, Buckeye Huddle.
I feel like there's 5 weeks worth of questions that we could ask you. A couple of things. Where do you see Sonny's role now on defense? Is he moving to linebacker? Where do you see him playing this year?
Yeah, we've had conversations with Sonny, and he has the flexibility to do a lot of different things, which is great, and he's embracing some of those things. And so as we get into spring, we'll start to figure out exactly how those will all shake out. But that's the one thing, when you see Sonny, he has the flexibility to do multiple things, not only because of his skill set in terms of his size, but also his mental makeup. And he's really willing to embrace some of those different roles, and that's exciting because it gives us a lot of flexibility with the defense.
And then is Devin Brown good to go with his ankle?
He is. Yep. He's had a really good couple of weeks. That quarterback room is really interesting, seeing the dynamic there of a bunch of guys that I think looks like they like hanging out together. And it's going to be a fierce competition this spring, but there's already some camaraderie in that room, and Devin really has the most experience out of that group coming back, and he's shown really good leadership. Even coming off the last one, a little bit disappointing, being injured and everything, but he's rehabbed well, and he's really done a nice job so far with Mick, and excited to see the spring.
You you'd like to have 4 scholarship quarterbacks. What's it like now having 5?
Yeah, we had to bring in some extra chairs, I guess, but it's good. I think it's healthy, and we say this all the time in recruiting. If you don't want to compete, Ohio State's probably not the right place for you, and it makes everybody in that room better. But it's not just there; it's at every position, and I think they're all embracing it.
Far left, Nathan Barrett, Cleveland.com.
I know Bill's situation has left this kind of awkward purgatory that you're in, I guess. But did you go into the process with a template that you were looking for, and he just happened to fit it? And does that maybe inform what you'd be looking for if you had to pivot to something else?
Yeah, there were certain things that I wasn't just going to make this decision and say, well, we're just going to go in this direction now. Throw somebody into that role. It has to be the right person. And I felt like after spending a bunch of time on it, Bill was that right guy for that right spot at that time. And so, if something were to change, then we'd have to adjust from there. But that was something we spent a lot of time on to make sure it was right.
Decided yet what you want to do with the 10th position, the 5th defensive coach? Do you have a positional specificity of what you want to do with that yet?
No, we have some flexibility there. We've had multiple conversations. I think we can go in a couple different directions, but we're still not ready to make a decision there yet. Certainly have talked to people, and probably about a week away there.
Third row, middle, Dan Holt, 11 Warriors.
Right. Going back to the quarterbacks, how are you going to manage reps this spring with having 5 scholarship quarterbacks?
Yeah, just going to try to get as many reps as we possibly can of team reps, 7-on-7 reps, and we need to get the guys as many reps as they can. It's not just at quarterback; it's at other positions, but that means there'll be a lot of reps out there for the guys. But we're going to be smart this spring in terms of there's certain guys that have played a bunch of football, and those guys are in a different situation than guys who just came in January. And then you have guys that are in the middle there who have played some football but really need this spring to grow and build. And so we'll identify that as the spring goes on to see who needs what reps. But when you have the quarterback room that we have, we're going to need a bunch of team reps to make sure we're developing these guys. They're learning the offense, and for Devin, he probably has the most experience, but Lincoln really doesn't have a ton. He hasn't gone through a spring yet. Will's brand new to the offense. Air and Julian are in the same boat. So we need to get these guys as many reps as we possibly can. So there'll be some long practices.
Do you feel like you need to give Will a majority of those first team reps of him coming in, potentially being a starter?
What we need to do is figure out, how many reps do you really need to get, at the end of the spring to, be ready to move into the summer. So whatever that is, it's not a percentage. It's just like, all right, here's what we need per practice, and then we'll make sure that we get those reps.
I also want to ask you about Tim Walton. Obviously, he's done a lot of good things for you guys recently as a recruiter. What did you see in him coming from the NFL that made you believe he could be a successful recruiter?
First off, it's his personality and his makeup, his character. I can't say enough great things about Tim Walton. His background of developing secondary play in the NFL speaks for itself, and the players that he's worked with, and the testimony when you talk to the players, they speak glowingly of what he's done to help them. The next thing was the fact that Tim played here. He's a Buckeye, and he wanted to help Ohio State, win a championship, and that was a big part of it. But then when you get around him more, you just realize, he's talented. I mean, he's good in a lot of areas, and when you're evaluating coaches, the first thing is, okay, how are they on the field as a technician? How are they schematically? How are they with relating to players? How are they in recruiting? Tim does a lot of those things. And so our guys have embraced his mentality. I think our secondary is super competitive. I think they want to, compete in everything that they're doing. You watch them go through drills. I mean, they're going at it with each other. And I think that really reflects Tim's mentality. And I think you can see we have an opportunity to have a really excellent secondary this year, and a big part of that is what Tim's doing. And then you're seeing the recruiting that he's doing. So I think all those things, add up to Tim being the best secondary coach in America.
Right behind him, Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, Dan was asking you about the quarterbacks. When we talked to Will, he presented himself as the starting quarterback, and I assume every guy you want that. Do you see him that way? I know before, sometimes you've let this play out, but how do you view him, given he has one season left?
Yeah, listen, Will came here to play football, so, I hope that's his mentality, and I hope all the guys have that mentality. So, he's going to learn the offense and get going, but he's done a great job so far with the feedback. A big part of the quarterback play here is what goes on in that weight room with Coach Mick. The leadership and the way that guys work. You have to build credibility up amongst your teammates, and that's a big part of it. We talk to quarterbacks about this all the time. Talk to about to CJ when he first went to the NFL. It's like you have to endear yourself into that building, and you have to earn the respect of the guys in the building. And I think Will's doing that.
You mentioned Quinshawn in terms of kind of replacing guys, but he's a guy who has a ton of carries, a ton of yards. Obviously, a little different situation than what you had before. How do you see that working out, especially with Travion then deciding to come back and maybe having two of the better running backs in the country?
Well, when it first happened and Quinshawn went to the portal, the first thing was talking to Travion, and what are your thoughts? And he was unbelievable. If you think it helps the team, coach, then let's do it. And then talking to Quinshawn, saying Travion is here and he's coming back, and he said, well, I'd love to go play with him. I think he said that to the media last week, and so I just think that both of their approaches are that they they can get each other better. But it all started with Travion, and I think Travion's leadership so far this year, as he's transitioned into his fourth year, has been tremendous. The way that he's gone about his work, the way that he's holding guys accountable, he's got a different look in his eye, and I think that's important. He's been in these games before, he knows. But I'll give Quinshawn credit. He also has embraced what we've been in our culture in the next last couple of weeks, and we'll see as it grows. But all the reports are that he's doing a great job of simulating. But the whole running back room, and Dallin, James and Sam, that's a heck of a room, and there's a lot of depth there. And when I think about next season, you have your 12-game regular season, you have the Big Ten championship game, and then you have the 12-team playoff. I mean, you're talking about possibly maybe 16, 17 games, and so that's a long run. That's an NFL schedule, and so your roster needs to reflect that. And having depth at running back will be very, very important. There'll be a lot of carries to go around.
Andy Backstrom, Letterman Row.
Ryan, we talk about December being so crazy, but what is January? What was it like for you? Was there any kind of playbook? And felt like every day there was something new for you guys.
Well, like any year, you have to come off of the season and try to identify, what's important moving forward, what's important for the next calendar year, what's important for the next 3 years, what's important for the next 5 years, and so always look at that to figure out what needs to be done. And so you start off with your roster, then you go to the staff, and you just try to do everything you can to make sure that you're making the adjustments that need to be made based on things you've learned, based on what you've seen the past season. And so, as a leader, it's your job to put a plan together and create a vision of what it could look like. And again, it started with these guys deciding to come back. Again, Lathan Ransom and Denzel Burke, and and then Jack, decides to start talking to the guys about, hey, we need to bring this thing back. We need to go chase a championship next year. There's a lot of things that we need to do. And then Emeka jumps in, and a bunch of guys, JT and Cody Simon, these guys all decide they want to come back. That's where that was the first step, and then the next step was adding the pieces. Certainly, making some tweaks to the staff. And that's just the beginning. Now we have to go to the spring and execute the plan. It's a long, long road. There's no magic recipe to this thing other than hard work, and we know it's going to be a long run in next January. But that was one thing that I felt like as a leader, we need to put a plan together, create a vision of what we want this to look like in the next month, and go to work about executing it.
Yeah, and then one more thing about the quarterbacks. Just what are your initial impressions of Air and then Julian coming in? What have you seen from them, and what kind of quarterbacks do you think they are?
Yeah, they're just getting started. It used to be that when you came in at mid-year, it was a big, a significant, the fact that you're coming in at mid-year. Now it's a little bit more normal. Guys are planning their, sophomore, junior years around graduating at mid-year, and it allows everybody an opportunity as they come in the summer to not be a freshman anymore. So everything that's going on is new. And so, they're going to have to embrace everything that's going on new. And I think that's hard. You got Julian who's coming in from California. You have Air coming in from Georgia. And when everything's new, there's an adjustment phase, and that's like that for every freshman. And so, they're every day that goes by, they're getting more and more comfortable here and getting their feet underneath them. They're gonna have to learn the offense here and get going on the field. But it's great when you have, like, Lincoln didn't go through that last year, and we knew that. Lincoln was a tremendous basketball player and a tremendous baseball player, and we sat down with the family and said, we're going to be a little bit behind here if we come in during the summer, and we knew that. So that was part of the agreement, but we knew that he was going to be a little behind. I feel like with these guys coming in now, they'll be further ahead and be able to make more of an impact in the fall.
Cameron Teague Robinson, The Athletic.
Ryan, I think the assumption when you went to the portal was that if you got a quarterback, it'd be a graduate guy who would come in. When you decided to go after Julian, did you have a conversation with the guys in the quarterback room, or kind of what was that conversation like?
Yeah, that's something I try to really do a thorough job of, is making sure I communicate when we're doing something like that, because this is not a program that brings in 20, 25, 30 guys in the portal. But when we do, I try to share my thoughts on why, try to communicate it, and for the most part, guys embrace it. There's times where maybe they don't like it, but I always feel like it's important for me to communicate the best I can. Not always perfect, but I think it's important to do.
In the past, you've been pretty vocal about NIL support with the program and around this university in general. Is NIL for you where you wanted it to be? I know it changes like basically weekly now.
Right.
Is it where you want it to be right now, you think?
Well, like you said, it changes all the time. It's changed in the last year. It changed in December, and it's probably going to change again in May. So it's something that we all have to adapt to, and we're working hard. I think, everybody involved has been working really hard to make sure that where we need to be competitive. And so we'll keep trying to adapt the best we can, knowing that I'm sure there are changes coming again in the next couple of months. So, but I think, all that is very important. But what's most important is, guys embracing the culture and knowing that when they come in the building every day, they're going to be part of a program that cares about each other, got a great locker room, got a great staff, and, got a fan base that's going to support them.
Jeremy Birmingham, The Podcast.
Right, it's signing day.
Oh, yeah.
Dominic Burks joins the class. Obviously, kind of unique recruitment. Didn't really get talked about much or really even evaluated until middle of the senior year because of injuries and movement
Right.
and all that stuff. What made him a good fit for you guys when you decided in late December, that you needed another defensive line?
Yeah, we felt like you said, with the injuries and things, it was a little bit late, but we saw somebody who has a lot of talent. And then, Larry spent some time with him, and then we brought him down on a visit, spent some time with him around here to see about the fit. And I think that's what's important, is the position coaches and Mark do a lot of the evaluating. And let me, before I forget to do this, you got to recognize Mark Pantoni and the work that he's doing and some of the stuff that he's really adapted. His job has changed so much in the last couple of years, and he's killing it right now. And so, he and his staff deserve a huge shout out here. Because of some of the work that's been done in the last couple of months. But going back, it's Mark and his staff and the position coach's job to identify the best they can. Can this player play for us talent-wise? And then, it's my job as the head coach to see if he's a fit culturally, and make sure that this is a guy that, can embrace what it means to be a Buckeye. Being at Ohio State's not for everybody. And I think when Dom came down, you quickly see that this is what he wanted. He wanted to be a Buckeye. He's from the state of Ohio. He understands the rivalry. There's a lot that was positive there. He knows he's going to have to come in and work and compete. And, just like all these guys, we say, hey, if you want to come in and start day one, this is not the right place for you. Now, you can start day one. We have guys who have done it, but it's not going to be guaranteed. You're going to have to earn everything that you get here at Ohio State. And he was willing to do that. He wants to come in and compete. And I'm so excited to see what how things go with him when he gets here. But he won't be here till the summer.
Different for a kid like that from Ohio who waited. I mean, he was committed to Washington. He decided not to sign a month ago, which was not at your behest.
Right.
Does it mean something different when a kid like that gets added late? Do you guys feel it different in the building?
Well, I guess when you look back at the last month, it's just unique, I guess, in where college football is. Like you said, here's somebody who's committed to Washington. There was a coaching change there. There was a coaching change at Alabama. There's been coaching changes across the board, which creates this ripple effect. But in particular to Dom, we've had guys, I guess, in the past that have been in the same boat who in these type of situations, you evaluate their senior film and you go off of that, who want to be at Ohio State, and that recipe's worked. It has. A lot of guys we recruit early now, we go off of their sophomore film, we go off of their junior film. Here's somebody that we made the decision based off their senior film, and that's just more confirmation he's the right fit.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, I know you mentioned you're considering your options for that 10th spot. Philosophically, where are you at as far as whether you want to have a full-time special teams coach? That's something you've had every year since you've been here. You can have a full-time guy. You can divide up those responsibilities. Just where you at, sort of the process and all that.
Yeah. There's a lot that comes into that last spot, and I think both of those options are on the table. I feel comfortable going either direction, but finding the right guy is going to be what's important.
And you also, Matt Guerreri, you mentioned he might, when that was announced, he could have some additional responsibilities.
Yeah.
Does that include special teams? And
Yeah.
What do you think of the hire overall?
Yeah, I think Matt brings a diverse background in terms of his, he's been a coordinator. He's an excellent teacher. He also has been here before, so the guys, Lathan and some of the older guys knew who Matt was. So it's not just a brand new addition to the staff. I think he's going to work really well with Tim back there. He knows Jim's system very well, and so that's going to be seamless. He knows the system. But in terms of his help on special teams, we're going to see how big that is. But I feel like, Matt really is a great teacher. He's very intelligent. He's been a coordinator before. So, we'll see based on how that 10th position shakes out, how much responsibility he'll have.
Austin Ward, podcast.
Right, it's a new experience to have SEC coaches accusing Ohio State of having too much money or spending too much money. You comfortable with that? Did you find that weird, of bringing up the old comments from 2 years ago about the payroll and size of all that?
Well, I just think recruiting is always going to be competitive. It is, and so that's just kind of how it goes. And we're always trying to bring in the best talent we possibly can, but also the right culture fit for Ohio State. And I've said this before: you don't just bring anybody in here. But all of these guys wanted to be here. I think that's probably the most significant. Caleb wanted to be here. Quinshawn wanted to be here. Will wanted to be here. These weren't situations where, certainly you have to recruit, but we want guys who want to be here, because in the portal nowadays, if they don't like it, they can just leave. So a big part of that is opening up our doors and our players. Really recruiting our guys. And that's, really where I think over time, we've built a culture of development. We've built a culture where guys enjoy being with each other, and that kind of recruits itself over time. And so, we're counting on that to continue to, build us some momentum in the future. But we know recruiting is very, very competitive. And, it's our job as coaches, certainly as the head coach, to acquire as much talent as you can and then, go develop it.
In line with the same philosophy it feels like that you've always had. Is there a change in your, I guess it feels like, Ohio State's being more aggressive, and maybe that's not the right term for it. The size of the class is not different than a year ago, as you said. Is there administrative support? Is there different NIL support? Is there a different mentality for you that went into, because it does feel different this year, even though you're describing the same thing that you have from years past.
Well, I think the administration's been unbelievable. I think Gene's been great, and certainly, had conversations with Ross and President Carter has been great, but and so that's been huge to have that type of support has always been great. But I just think that across college football right now, it's just in a very unique situation when you see some of the coaching changes, and then we ended up adding 3 guys from Alabama. There's a lot going on right now. And so, our guys, again, I think it all goes back, though, to our players coming back. There's nothing more important than that. And so we can, talk about the recruiting, and we can talk about NIL, we can talk about all that, but ultimately you had a bunch of guys who wanted to come back and finish a bunch of business that wasn't finished at the end of last year. And maybe, the guys across the country recognize that. They see our guys, they want to be part of our program because of, these guys. And I can't give them enough credit, because to me, I know we've added some pieces, but the guys who decided to come back, to me, that's the real story.
How much larger was that group of guys coming back than you would have projected?
I don't know. I don't know. I always felt like, you know, Marv was a top 5 pick, and that was probably going to happen. You know, although that wasn't like a done deal right out of the gate either. You know, I think, you know, it's hard when you work so hard towards your goals and you come up short, to just walk away from it. And I think that goes to show you not only how competitive our guys are, but how much they recognize what being a Buckeye is, and how much they want to be able to come back into this building when they're older and be proud of winning championships and being on the walls and all those types of things. And so I think that's really what it came down to in the end. Could some of these guys have gone on to the NFL? Yeah, they could have, and they probably would have been drafted fairly high. And so when you have a bunch of guys like that shows a lot about the character of these guys and how much they've embraced being in Columbus, being Buckeyes. Because some of them are from Ohio, like Jack and, you know, some of the guys, but like not all of them. You know, they're from different parts of the country. But I think having the guys from Ohio, they understand what it means to be a Buckeye, and that's their job, to make sure they understand the rivalry. But now they've lived it. They know what it's like. And that's different when, you know, you're Donovan Jackson coming from Houston, or you're, you know, JT coming from Seattle. You know, now, you know, after a couple years of being in the rivalry and being at Ohio State and coming up short, you know, you want to leave here with something in your pocket, something you're proud of. And I think that's what's reverberating for the building right now.
Far left, Whitney Harding, WCMH.
Ryan, I'm actually going to jump off of that. You've talked so much about the guys coming back. You just did. What does it say about the personality of this team? Every team every year has a new personality.
Yeah.
But these guys coming back, what does it say about the personality, the drive of 2024?
Yeah, I think it's still being forged, and I think it's easy for coaches to put a bunch of slogans on shirts and do those types of things. We're just trying to work. We know it's a long run to next year, and so, you know, we're not getting too worried about some of that right now. What we're trying to do is just work. Just keep building this thing, keep growing, have a great spring, and it's a long journey to next year. And the more veteran you are, sometimes the more you recognize that. You want to all of a sudden fix everything in a month. That can't be fixed in a month. This is a long road to the next year, and I think our guys know that. I think our staff knows that. But there is urgency. There's a great look in their eye, and so we'll see. We still got a lot of runway out here that we got to continue to work through. But the good news is we got the right guys in the seats, and that's what's important.
You said you're here at Ohio State, you're always trying to get to the next level. How does Caleb Downs help you do that with this defense that was already amazing last year?
Yeah, Caleb's you saw what he did as a freshman. You know, to say, you know, we're all excited to have him part of the program is an understatement. He brings a lot to the table. You guys will learn that. You know, won't get into all that right now, but his talent is exceptional. But, you know, he's already created an unbelievable amount of discipline in his life. He's created the skills to play the safety position at a high level. But I'll tell you, it's fun, you know, because that secondary, I mean, they're competitive now. Like, they're not going to take a backseat to anybody. So everyone sat up a little straighter when he walked in, and that was good. But they embraced him. You know, he knows those guys through the recruiting process. So it's going to be some great competition this spring. But, you know, he is very, very talented. And you know, what do you have, 107 tackles as a freshman in the SEC, you know? So, I mean, my goodness, it's going to be fun.
Steve Hellwagon, 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, Coach, talking to Will Howard, it seemed like the timeline for him, he settled on you guys, and you guys may have settled on him a few weeks before it actually kind of went public, I suppose, and he admitted that he put it off or didn't want to preempt the bowl game and different things like that. Just, can you speak to maybe that whole process, and was he a guy that you guys, as soon as he went in the portal, I don't want to say before the Michigan game or, you know, after the Michigan game, whatever, that he was a guy that you guys were targeting?
Yeah, I think when you look back on December, and, you know, the coaches had a meeting at our conference and just talked about what December is like. And, you know, first off, having to go on the road, having signing day, preparing for bowl games. Now we're going to have to prepare for the playoffs, the portal being open. I mean, December is really a nightmare. And the way that it's all designed right now is chaotic. That's all kind of a blur, quite honestly, to me, like how that all played out. But you have to try to have contingency plans in place for things that happen, whether it's, you know, at certain positions, whether it's in your coaching staff, because things change quickly as we've learned and will continue to learn. And I think that's what's really important is that, you know, it's our job as coaches and my job as the head coach to continually make the right decisions for planning ahead to sustain what we've done, and now obviously chase that top, you know, 1%, 2% to finish off some of these games at the end of the season that we need to do. And reacting, but not overreacting as well. And so, you know, you have to have contingency plans in place, but you also have to make sure that you're being transparent. And I think we found that balance.
The O'Brien process, Coach Belichick retires and Bill's now available. And in that process, I presume you talk to other people. So if, in the possibility that Bill O'Brien leaves, can you go back and have conversations with other people? Like, what would that look like? I know this is all supposition.
Yeah, no, I get it. But that's what we're talking about, contingency plans. Yeah. Yeah. But again, it isn't just one of those situations where you just, you know, take out one guy and put another guy in there and it's like, okay, move on. It doesn't work that way. So, but yes, you know, we did talk to different people for that position, and, you know, we'll have contingency plans in place. Hopefully we don't have to go down that road. But if we do, then we'll adapt.
Last thing I want to ask about offensive line seemed to be the Achilles heel, obviously in the bowl game. Maybe the thing that could hold you back from winning the national championship if it's not addressed. Just in your mind, what is the plan? And they're going to go against a great defensive line again this spring. And are you hoping to get through that and then make some decisions, I guess?
Yeah. Yep. You know, just having Bill just, you know, watch the film and see our guys out there and having, you know, he knows Seth, adding that piece to the puzzle was critically important. But just, you know, the feedback that, you know, just a fresh set of eyes. What do you see? He sees some talent. He sees some guys who are good, and he sees depth. He sees some young guys out there. So, like you said, like we're going to have a really competitive spring and kind of see where we're at. But you know, the idea right now is that we have enough to go win a national championship with the guys that we have in this building right now. We come out of the spring and recognize that we don't, then, you know, we'll have to go from there. But there are some really good young players in that room, and there are some guys now coming back with some experience, and that should matter going into next season.
Far left, Mitch Stacy, Associated Press.
All right.
Mitch.
You talked about the issues involved in getting quarterbacks enough reps in spring and even in the preseason to determine who your starter is. I mean, what's the philosophy of adding these guys and putting 5 guys in the quarterback room when, I mean, how are you going to be able to evaluate? I mean, there's just not enough reps, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, we're going to try to do everything we can to get him as many reps as possible. Certainly the Julian thing was not something that we planned on. You know, when you sit back at this time last year, you don't say, okay, here's how we're going to look at this point next year. But when it became a situation that was available, we felt like it was something that we could really enhance the room, and so we did it. And we've had situations before where that room has been crowded, but the cream usually rises to the top on this thing. And so we're going to do everything we can to get as many reps as possible, and then rely on, you know, myself, Bill, our experience of you know, seeing quarterbacks over the years and recognizing the traits that it takes to be a starter.
And figuring that the cream that doesn't rise to the top is probably going to hit the transfer portal at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really focus on that, you know, but you know, we'll just kind of focus on, you know, developing the room, and we go from there, because we can only control what we can control. And I think that's part of the process right now. It's just the way things are with the portal is you can't hold somebody back. You know, if they want to go, they can go in the portal. And that's part of, you know, being transparent in the recruiting process, knowing that each room is going to be super competitive, and then we try to adapt the best we can from there.
Andy Anders, Lebanon Warriors.
Going back to the offensive line, have there been any conversations with Josh Pryor about potentially looking at him at guard this year? And I guess where does he stand?
Yeah. Yeah, Josh has a little bit of a swing capability there, so he's going to be on the right side right now, and we're going to, take a look to see what the right combination will be on the right side now that we lost Matt. He's going to play tackle. He's going to play a little bit of guard, and we'll kind of see how that shakes out as the spring goes on. But he does bring some flexibility there, which I think is good for his long-term football career as well. Going on to the NFL and going on to a team and being able to play guard and tackle is valuable. So we'll see. There's certainly things that I think, being a first-time starter there this year that he did well, but certainly areas that, if we're going to reach our goals, he's going to have to improve on. He knows that. But playing guard is something that we'll take a peek at this spring and see if that's right. But his feedback is important too. You have to want to embrace these type of things, just like with Sonny. It's the same thing when Cade made his move, Steele made his move. When guys make those moves, you really want guys to take ownership of it. Not just because the coaches told you to do it. So his feedback will be important. He's been in the program for a while, and he's a guy that has leadership and leadership capabilities, which, as we know, is important because if we're going to win games in November, December, and January, it's going to start in the offensive line.
And where, as far as that right side goes, where are Tegra and Luke at as far as competing for those?
Big spring, yeah, huge spring for both of those guys, and that's not the only guys. I mean, there's a bunch of other guys in that room. This is a huge spring for them, and even the guys who came in the summer. I think about Lincoln, I think about Arvell, I think about some of these guys that haven't had a whole spring to really go to work on. So excited, and the more reps those guys get, just like the quarterbacks need, the better, and we'll have a better idea of it. But having mat drills, having some of the workouts and the runs and all those things will allow them the opportunity to have a year of experience under their belt. Physically they're where they need to be, mentally where they need to be, learning the offense and defense, and I think I'm hoping this is the most competitive spring we've had since I've been here, but we'll see.
Right behind him, Tom Moore, Buckeye Huddle.
Last time we were in here with you, we got to watch you process the Jeremiah Smith news in real time. Took a little while before that tweet came in, I think the next morning maybe. What was that day like for you? And then what have you sort of heard about Jeremiah, since he's been here?
Yeah, he's jumped right in. You guys have seen the talent. The talent's there. I think the thing that's been most impressive to me so far is his discipline that he's already built in his life, and then the skill of playing the position at such a young age as well. And Hart and everybody will continue to build on that and grow on that, but has had a great approach so far. So certainly expecting big things from him. Yeah, that day was a long day. It was a crazy day. Haven't had one like that before, but you're also talking about the number one recruit in the country.
And in terms of bringing in a play caller, obviously there's some that's going to impact your life a little bit during the week.
Yeah.
In some of the late game kind of moments where Notre Dame's got the ball, you're trying to manage the clock, you're trying to figure out how much time you're going to have, all that stuff. How much does having someone, whether it's Bill or whoever else this fall, how much does that help you with just handling all the stuff in your head and multitasking all of the stuff in your head in those kind of close and late moments?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the first part of the question was how much will it affect the day-to-day. I think that goes back to, how much will I be involved with special teams, based on, the offensive coordinator's role, and so that will affect a little bit about the 10th position. But yeah, in game, I feel like when you're calling the game, you have an idea of, okay, should you go for it on 4th and 2? Well, do you have a good play? It's one thing if you don't have an idea what the play is you just go for it. Well, then you don't have a good play. I feel like when you're calling the game, you're a little bit more of control of the situation. You know what's going on. You can, if you don't like the look, you can call a timeout. There's just so many more things when you're actually calling the game that you're in control of. But I do think, having somebody else call the game will allow me a little bit of a step back and see things from a wider lens of, okay, how's the defense how's it going with the defense, the special teams, overall, kind of step back a little bit and have a little bit of a different perspective. There's pluses and minuses to both situations. We can sit back and look at, stuff that went on in the playoffs, our game, when do you go for it, when you not go for it, decisions that are made. And listen, we can second guess all those things, but I do think being able to step back will give me a little bit of a wider lens on things. But there's a lot of guys, who in particular in the NFL, who call it, who are also making those decisions in game. I think they do a great job. So I think you have a good feel for what's going on in the game, and you have a little more control. I guess sometimes you can get a little bit laser focused on what's going on in terms of the play call as opposed to maybe sometimes the situation. So I think those are the pluses and minuses of that.
Brendan Gooley, Buckeyes Now on Sports Illustrated.
Ryan, maybe building off that a little bit, how hard was it for you to give up play calling or to, say that's your intention if it's...
Well, I haven't done it yet, so we'll see. But I know that that is an ideal situation moving forward. I know that it has to happen. There's so much that's going on right now in college football. Do I want to? No, I don't. I love the football part of it. I love calling plays. I love being in there. But I'm getting pulled out, and I'm just not. On a Wednesday night, thinking about what to call on 3rd and 4 on the 21-yard line, in the third quarter of a game. Like, those are all the things you rehearse in your mind, and it takes a lot of work. And I know that my energy and time and all that stuff needs to be in other areas. And especially with everything going on right now across the board, just with the team and the portal and NIL and just all those types of things. So I know that's the right thing to do, but now making sure the right person's in place was critical when we hired Bill.
Certainly don't want to put words in your mouth, but from the outside looking in, it feels like there is a different sense of urgency just around the program right now. Is that accurate?
I mean, there's always urgency here, if you don't believe that, try losing a game, that's just the way it is. So, we always have urgency, but I think, it goes back to the guys that decided to come back. He's talking about 6 or 7 guys who were probably projected in the first 3 rounds decided to come back. And then you're seeing, a bunch of momentum that way. But I think it goes back to, again, the type of culture that's here. And listen, you look at the last 2 years, we're a player 2 away, but it didn't happen. And so it just, it hurts, it stings, all the above. And so we have to figure out a way to chase that last, few drives of a game to go finish it off the way we're supposed to. And, when you sit here in February, it's such a long way away to get there. But it's motivating our guys, and there is a great sense of urgency in the building.
In Justin's last year and CJ's last year, I think you alluded to the fact that you felt like you had a championship level roster. It was part of the reason you fought so hard to play in that COVID year. It's obviously early. You referenced it's a quarterback competition. Do you have some of those same feelings about this particular roster right now?
I do, yeah.
Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
Brian, you always talk about extraordinary traits with quarterbacks.
Yep.
Is it harder to identify an extraordinary trait with a guy that you've never had in the system or recruited, or was that easier to find with Will now that you've got 3 or 4 years of film on?
I mean, you go to the film and you try to identify with the film, in particular with Will. I like his competitiveness. I like his toughness. I think, Mick would tell you that he sees that every day in the weight room right now. He's a guy who won the Big 12 championship. He's a couple, a field goal or whatever away from beating Texas this year. He's got a, mature approach about him. And, he's got the ability to throw the football. He can, when he needs to run, he can run. But he's big. You see the size of him when he gets up on you. He's a big guy. So there's a few things there that you really can grab onto.
You went into the portal and got Seth and Caleb. Their last game was in the Rose Bowl, obviously, against Michigan.
Yeah.
You guys take that game so seriously. What were the conversations like with those guys about that and understanding the rivalry? Did you think that it was a little easier for them to understand the rivalry, considering they just had their season ended by that team as well?
Yeah, no, they verbalized that, and so they were able to get on board real quick with that. In particular, Caleb knows. I mean, he went through this thing. We were right down to the wire at the end with Caleb, so he knows. But then, but Seth as well, coming off of that last game, they know what's coming at the end of the year.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
I mean, you just admitted this. You didn't really want to give up play calling, but it just seems like, and maybe this is fair or not, college football isn't going to allow you to be able to do that part the same way that you see in the NFL with head coaches who still call plays.
Yeah, I mean, it's become very difficult to do that. Yes.
So we were asking you questions about this a year ago, and you hadn't quite gotten there yet. About when did you get there that you actually have to give this up this time, even if it's clearly not something you want to do? Because, I mean, it's like playing Madden in real life, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not something you just wake up one day and decide. It takes a little bit of time and you know what's right. But at the same time, like, we're not just going to put somebody into that spot and say, hey, now you go take the offense. Like, that is not going to work. So it had to be the right fit, and that's why we spend so much time on this and being thorough, and that's Bill, checked all those boxes for us.
So in those how does your time get split up? Do you envision when the season starts and how much you're meeting maybe with the offense, maybe how much you're meeting with the defense, and just all the other things you have to do in a 24-hour period?
Yeah, I think that'll be something that's new for me. Right now, it's more of, continuing to do what we've done with the Ohio State offense, but then blending some of Bill's ideas and being in there to make sure that we can connect the dots. But then as time goes on, kind of stepping away a little bit, being in the room when things are going on, but being able to step out and then get into the defense, giving them, some thoughts from a different perspective. That's one of the things about being on offense is you have to become an expert at what the defense is trying to do and some of the things that can create problems for the offense, and being just a sounding board in there and talking through that, but also being around the players more and being a part of special teams.
Front row, Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, a little more than, I guess, a month and a half ago, probably the lowest point or a very low point after the Cotton Bowl. How different does it feel now in terms of just the mood in the building? I mean, keeping all those guys, getting the transfers, hiring Bill O'Brien maybe. How different does it feel inside the building?
I mean, I don't know about different. That was a very unique situation, when Kyle decided to go in the portal and then losing Devin early, and there was a lot of dynamics, not having Marvin there, and just, I guess, the way college football is now and going into that. Certainly that wasn't fun, but we knew, regardless of what that game looked like, what we needed to do moving forward, and that's quickly was the focus. And our guys quickly recognized that. But when you come off of something like this, it takes a little time. And Cody and then Jack and then some of the guys started, all right, let's go, guys, let's get these guys together. And that's really what it came down to as we focus on next season. And I think there is a lot of excitement around it. I think the guys feel it every day in the building. So, now we got to go execute it all, but it's a long way till next year. But certainly, the right guys are in the right seats. And so that's exciting. And just fired up to see what this spring looks like with these guys on the field.
You talked about embracing the pressure that is coaching Ohio State. Michigan loses Harbaugh, they lose their nucleus. All the pressure is going to be on you next year. How much do you embrace that there is an all-in feel, even though obviously you don't lose all your chips if you don't win at all.
Yeah,
but there is that kind of feel.
I mean, again, I would say it's like that every year. And I watched C.J. Stroud get up there and say that pressure is a privilege, and I think he's so right about that. And we have an opportunity with an unbelievable team to go attack this thing next year, and that's what it comes down to. And to see the fans and Buckeye Nation, kind of buzzing over the last few weeks about this team and getting behind this team and building it. I think the guys feel it. Long way away from the season, but pressure is a privilege, and these guys have an opportunity now to go have a great season, knowing that it's a long way away and there's a lot of work to be done. But again, when you look at the team, we got the right guys in the right seats right now. Now, what kind of leadership do we have? There's a lot of things that now we need to go attack, but I think we all embrace that, and that's why we're at Ohio State.
One of those additions, Seth, you talked about him a little bit.
Yep.
How important is it to have a center who's experienced and can handle that, because that's the captain of the offensive line?
Yeah, when you have guys who have been in the program before, it helps. But just having guys who have played football before at center, quarterback is critical when you're looking to win every game, which is what we're trying to do. So he's played in the SEC championship. He's played against really good players in the SEC. He's been a part of a great program. So he brings something different to the table. And I think it's actually been good for our guys to say, so how is it different than what you did at Alabama? Because those guys don't know, and they get a little bit of feedback there, and it's good. It gives them a little bit of a different perspective and reference point. And I think those guys have embraced, not so much Julian because he was only there for a little while, but for Seth and for Caleb, even Quinshawn and some of the guys who are coming from a different program, to say, okay, here's what we did there. This is what's different here, and so that's been good for our guys.
Doug
You mentioning the idea that maybe you would be involved more with special teams. How did you maybe come to that thought process? And it does feel like sometimes there are head coaches who do that sort of, right, let you get your hands on a bunch of different parts of the team.
That's it. When you feel like, you're able to step away a little bit from the offense, you're able to be more involved with the special teams, which allows opportunity to be more around the players in this type of setting here. We do our special teams meeting in this team room right here. And also allows you an opportunity as, someone who's managing the game, to have an idea of when it's time to maybe block a punt, return, those type of things. So ideally, that's what, I'd like to do, but we'll just keep putting one foot in front of the other and adapt from there.
And just to clarify again, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. If it would wind up, would you hope that you would have someone you have faith in and would trust to be the offensive play caller, even if Bill O'Brien's not here? Then you would be able to find another person that you would proceed with that plan.
That would be the idea, but again, not just going to, put somebody into that spot just because it's a spot. Yeah.
And then you made 3 coaching changes this offseason. 2 of the guys were promoted from within that you let go. 1 was an outside hire. Just as you've grown as a head coach, what have you thought of the decisions you've made in putting staffs together? What have you learned? What do you think is the right balance between internal guys and external guys? Just where are you in hiring?
Well, I think going back to at the end of the season, you have to identify what are the things that we've got to make changes on, and then you kind of figure out how it all fits together from there. And what are the things that are going well? What are the things that you're trying to project might be an issue in a year or 2 down the road? And you use feedback from the guys on the staff, use feedback from the players to try to do the best you can. And, we'll see how it works. We'll know around this time next year how it worked. But, try to trust your instinct on it and utilize the info you're getting from the guys, that you trust. And but you also have to identify the things that need to get adjusted. And I think that's the key is, reacting but not overreacting. And I think that's not always easy to do here, because, when you lose a game, there can be a lot of panic. And what I try to do is make sure that I'm not doing that and just making sure I identify the things that need to get fixed and get them fixed so that we're in a better place at this time next year.
Time for a couple more questions. Coach, thank you so much for all your time today. Tim May Podcast, and Letterman Road.
Thank you, Jerry. You may have been asked this while I was in my traffic jam, but at the beginning, I just remember distinctly Eli Drinkowitz putting it eloquently in that pre-Cotton Bowl press conference about why he stepped away from, play calling, et cetera, and gave it to somebody because he owed it to the program about everything else that's going on. You seem to be listening intently to that. I'm just wondering, did that help you get to where you are today, or were you already headed that direction? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I was already, I think, remember a year ago, I was still kind of going down that road. It didn't quite work out that way. But I knew as the season was going on what needed to happen. But again, the key is finding the right guy. And because it's one thing to make that move, but if it's not the right person in the right spot, that doesn't do us any good. I mean, this is Ohio State. Like we can't have a bad day. We're not allowed. So it's a very, very unique person who, let's call it for what it is. The expectation here is we score 60 every game, and when we don't, it's like, what happened? So, that's a very unique person who has a tremendous background, and there's a lot that comes with the season. It's all about building towards the end of the season and then winning the games at the end of the season. And I think that's something sometimes that can get lost here. Like, playing in the Big Ten is not easy. There's going to be, we have to play on a road. There's going to be some of those trap games. There's going to be things along the way that we have to do. We know that next year we have a great schedule. We have 8 home games. We got to play at Oregon, got to play at Penn State, and then we get the last one at home. And so it's a heck of a schedule. But we know it's going to be a build up towards those games, and so we have to have a great idea of where our identity is, but playing our best football at the end of the season and making the right assumptions along the way. And when you come to Ohio State, it's unique than some of the other places. It just is. And like I think about like when Jim got here his first year, did a great job, but then you look at where he was in year 2, And we're going to be even better in year 3, I can tell you right now. And it was the same thing, you know, when I got here. You learn a little bit in year 1 as a coordinator. You learn a bit, and then, you know, you understand what you're working towards the end of the season. That's not the way it is everywhere else. It's not like that in the NFL. It's not like that at other schools across the country. So it's a very unique person in that situation, and so we had to find the right guy.
We've watched you grow as a head coach. At least I have. I mean, you know, because you hadn't been a head coach. And Stephen, I think, asked you this a while ago, but it would seem like the funnest thing you ever would get to do would be to call plays. I mean, you understand what I'm saying. I mean, you almost stepped away from that last year like you talked about and stuff, but now, I mean, what do you find the most fun in other than calling plays? If you follow my drift of your job, what in this day and age of
I wouldn't call anything right now fun. You know what I mean? It's what you do. Fun will be winning next year, but you adapt. You have to change, and I understand the reason why I had this opportunity is because what went on the offensive side of the ball. But then that's not the role that I'm in anymore, you know, and I have to make that adjustment and certainly understand that and embrace it. I think the thing that you have to really love is the interaction with people, driving people, and whether it's the players on the team, the staff, and you know, being a leader and being steadfast moving forward and not rocking the boat, being steady in the boat. That's kind of the term that I use all the time when, you know, all the seas are kind of rocky, you got to be steady in the boat. And I think as a leader, you have an opportunity to show your character in defining moments. And I think that the guys appreciate that. I think that's probably the thing that I have learned the most. And so I think we have the right group of guys coming back. We've added some good pieces, and the staff is coming together. We're almost there. And so, you know, we put everybody in this room right here, and we go swing towards next season. So, you know, just because, you know, it's a different role doesn't mean it's any, less fun or more fun. It's just a different role, and everybody has to embrace their role. I think that's the other part of it, you know, is you got to, you know, if you're the running backs coach or you're the secondary coach, you got to be the best coach in the country. And I say at Ohio State, if you can't do it here, where the heck are you going to do it? You know, if it's, you know, like what Tim's doing right now, BIA, best in America. Like, if you can't be BIA at Ohio State, where else are you going to do it? You know, I mean, if you can't be wide receiver, like, where else are you going to do it? You know, and so I challenge our coaches all the time. Like, when you come to Ohio State, if you can't do it here, you can't do it anywhere. And so that's where we need a bunch of guys who are experts at their position. And my job as the head coach is a little bit different than maybe it was a few years ago.
Are you close at all with James Laurinaitis? Do you want to see another year out of him and stuff? I mean, like I was talking about on the radio this morning, I mean, the biggest change for anybody becoming a full-time assistant coach is the recruiting aspect of things and stuff. Have you been impressed by him in that role? I mean, just what's your take on that aspect?
I've been very impressed, and I think he's got a really bright future in coaching. He's only been doing it a couple years, but playing has allowed him an opportunity to give him perspective, but he also has credibility with the guys, and so he's had an opportunity, and that was a part of it too, is being able to get on the road for a couple weeks, and he had never done that before because he didn't come up as a coach, so that was good for him to get out there, and he's done a really nice job, and you know, he's a big asset, and you know, we'll kind of figure out what that all looks like moving forward, but I've been impressed with his ability to coach because it's different than being a player.
One last quickie. Do you have a special or favorite Clay Hall story? You know, he's retired.
I heard, yeah. When did you announce that, Clay?
3 years ago, and I
No, Clay's been great. Clay's been a gentleman, you know, and I know everybody has a job to do here. And, you know, sometimes that means being critical of the head coach, and I get that. But Clay's always been a gentleman, and I know he's going to be missed around here. Appreciate you, Clay.
We're going to let him have the last question, but first, Bill Landis, Kings of the North, and the podcast.
Ryan, how much do you and Bill kind of speak the same language in terms of, you know, terminology, scheme, or is there any kind of adjustment there? And then what will the dynamic be between, you know, here's the Ohio State playbook, call it from here, or how much autonomy does he have to, you know, add to that, enhance it?
Yeah, you know, it's been great for him to come in and you know, kind of learn what we've done. So there's a reference point there, and then infuse some of his thoughts and ideas and tweaks to say, wait a minute, you know, because when you've been in a system for as long as we have, we call it this, but that doesn't make much sense. Well, it's because in week 7 we just decided to call it this. Well, let's kind of reorganize that. Nothing needs to be touched in this area. This is good, and it's great to come in with a different perspective to say, all right, if I'm coming in and I'm, last year, Josh Simmons. So why do we call it this? Well, it should make more sense. And so having Bill come in and saying, this would make more sense in terms of teaching it this way has been excellent. And so we've had those type of conversations. We're not all of a sudden going to change the terminology or what we do. And I think that's important as well because you just never know when a coordinator is going to be here or when he leaves. So we can't go changing the offense because you just don't know how things are going to shake out. But at the same time, it's great to have some of that collaboration. And I think I've always watched Bill and what he's done. I watched with the Patriots. I was obsessed with that and what they did there. But I also what he did with the Texans and Deshaun Watson there. Those first couple of years, and I studied about their empty package and what they did, and then obviously watched very closely what he did at Bama. So there's just a very diverse background there, and a lot of respect over the years. I think on both ends. He watched what we did here, so it's been great so far. It's been great.
With Will Howard, it was funny to me. We talked to him last week. He's a guy that has 1,000 career rushing yards, and he says, I don't really fancy myself that much of a runner. How did you guys evaluate that skill set on film when you watched it? Do you have an idea yet of how you might embrace that with him?
One of the things we got to do to win the last game of the year is run the football. And in order to do that, you want to have somebody that at least needs to be accounted for in the run game. If the other defense says, well, he's not a threat at all to run, that certainly changes the angles, changes the numbers, leverage, all the above. And so that was one thing that I wanted to make sure we had. And I think when you look at the guys we have on our roster right now, they all have the ability to do that. Started with that. Then from there, okay, how do they throw the football? What's their size? What's their intelligence? All those things. But we wanted to make sure there was enough of it. Doesn't need to be running around doing all kinds of, running with the ball, but needs to be able to at least be accounted for by the defense.
Mike, is Caleb Downs a day one starter?
Well, he was a freshman All-American. I think he was a second-team All-American, so he certainly will be hard to beat out. But, hey, you got to come and compete. You got to earn it. Nothing's going to be given. Nothing ever has been given. That goes back to when Justin came in, Justin Fields. He had to go earn it. And, we're not going to change that here at Ohio State. Now he's tremendously talented and, excited to make sure, we give him as many opportunities as he possibly can in all different areas too. You saw him as a punt returner. I watched him play in a high school game against Buford and he was running the ball. And so we even talked about that, maybe line him up in different things. So there'll be a lot of opportunity next year for Caleb Downs.
Coach, thank you very much.
One last thing.
Go ahead.
Just because you're retired.
Can you talk about the pride that you feel in RJ getting that Marshall offer, or can you discuss it?
Yeah, I'm proud of him. And he earned it. He loves football, and he's obsessed with it. And so, from when he wakes up in the morning to when he goes to bed at night, that's all he thinks about. So, I'm happy that he got that one. I'm sure there's a lot more to come from there. Yeah, thanks.
Better at that age. You were him.